Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Employability and Soft Skill Program Day 6. I see people have started joining in, and it as this wait will end soon, inshallah. So we still got a couple of minutes before we go live. If is there anyone who wants to share their feedback and raise their hand, we will allow them to speak for at least a minute about their experience, what they have been through for last 6 days, or as many sessions as they have. Okay.
Yeah, looks like they have some difficulty in speaking. That's fine. Let's move ahead, Shahzad Bhai, and we'll go to Saeed Bhai in case he wanted to address any query related to LMS.
Yeah, hello everyone. Hope you all are doing good. And yes, we have been observing, how you guys are, enrolling yourselves into LMS. And yes, time management, we see a lot of enrollments happening good. But stress management, we see a lot of people are still yet to take, the course and the assessment as well. Please continue, and then, please enroll into the course and also take the assessment on stress management. And on emotional intelligence, we would be updating the course after the webinar today. So you should be able to access the content on emotional intelligence right after the webinar. Yeah, and if you haven't signed up yet, okay, so in the chat box we will be sharing the URL for the LMS sign up. So please feel free to get enrolled, and then you can access the entire course content and also the day-wise recordings as well. So since we have around 5 sessions so far, so all the sessions are available, over the LMS. So when you log in, you will see a day-wise recording. So there you can just get enrolled. Yeah, and then there is one query, a common query that I'm seeing, from users is that they are saying they have taken the assessment, but the status of the course is still showing as incomplete. So which is totally fine. The course status depends upon a lot of factors, that there are like, we have uploaded certain course materials and an e-module as well. So unless you take the entire course materials, the course status will not be marked as complete. So having said that, okay, if you have taken the assessment, that is more than enough for your certification as well. The other, material what you see is supplemental. Yeah, so this is it from my end, and we are available here in the chat box to answer any of your queries that come up on LMS. Over to you, Shah sir.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. Let's continue with our concluding part of the EI workshop that we will start today. I hope everyone is able to clear my voice, hear me well, and the video. I will be sharing the screen in a second. All right. Let's catch up, review, and move ahead. I have this slide just to do a quick review of everything that we did. Basically, I just want to talk about how emotional intelligence has gained so much popularity, why it's in so much demand, and why it helps us and why it matters. So this is just a slide that will, refresh our areas that we would like to. And this is a picture of the iceberg model. There were 2 slides that I had on this, and this is the other one. On the top is the tip of the iceberg, which is KSA, the knowledge, skills, and abilities. And then what's hidden are some personal attributes. Okay, so emotional intelligence only taps on these underwater hidden attributes as very, very admirable traits. This is all to say that, when it comes to hiring, when it comes to recruitment, let's look at the aspect of HR. These are the traits that are hidden, are seldom asked. Okay, so this was the conventional wisdom how our recruiters went by. And however, this image will tell you how emotional intelligence is able to intellectually tap onto this area of hidden traits, and how I will say that these are the traits that will probably benefit the organization. These are the traits that will predict the employee's future behavior. Okay, So this is what I just want to talk about before I continue with the slides. I hope this makes sense. This is the reason why EI is so popular. This is the reason why everyone is able to bank on EI. Because what EI does is it goes and digs into the hidden part of the inner self, and it says that this is more important. Okay, that's what makes it popular. It banks, it conceptualizes, it tries to emphasize on an area that was hidden. Okay, one example that I want to give you, or if there's anything in your mind as to which trait is hidden, how it will come out and benefit the personal development, the personality, and will add to the concept of decision making, leadership skills, will add to the source of sustained competitive advantage. This is what the organizers are looking for. So you can come up with any of these traits that we can address towards the end of the session. However, one example that I want to give you is empathy. Okay, now is empathy seen on the top? It's not. Is empathy seen, hidden under the water? It is, or it probably is. But is it visible at the time of an interview when you're talking to somebody, or when you're talking in a meeting, or say you're onboarding? Can a person come up with a question that will, arouse the empathetic aspect of you? It's possible. But on a regular interview, there is no way that the interviewer would know how empathetic you are, okay, or highly sensitive you are to various things. It could be a good or bad thing, but empathy is taken as a very admirable trait. So it's never seen, but a person has to be empathetic to employees. Especially an HR manager would have to know that he's there to work for the well-being of the employee, not the employer. So these traits are hidden, and this is what EI does. This is what makes it popular. This is what makes learning EI or being emotionally intelligent beneficial to the organization. I hope this emphasizes the very reason why we are interested in EI, why EI is a popular field, how it helps organizations. Okay, we're going to continue with our modules in a second. I think we'll start out with this video.
Kevin sat and listened to his colleagues' presentations. He nodded when he agreed with something, and he clapped at the end of every presentation. When it was his turn to give his presentation, he made sure he kept his tone of voice positive. At the end of his presentation, his colleagues cheered and congratulated him on a job well done.
All right, so when somebody's making a presentation, it's always advisable to praise him, applaud, or give him a cheers, heads up, or a thumbs up. This also applies into other areas of business, or especially the social area that we incorporate so much in our life. So it's a good trait to admire somebody and to give him, thumbs up, because the same will be the case with you. But this is to say how empathetic you are or how emotionally intelligent you are. It's a good thing. Same would apply to you responding to anyone responding to your post on the social media. All right, I think we left off at this slide, module 6, CSR. Okay, so we're going to take a look at social management and responsibility, how it refers to an organization's participation into the world of business, or how it says how an organization is responsible towards, its obligations, and how it's taking care of its obligation towards the outside world. Now, most of you may be familiar with the term CSR. This is mostly in, I'm going to use the term fashion again, because very few organizations have a CSR department. CSR refers to corporate social responsibility. It's nothing but the social area that we're trying to portray here in an organization. Just like individuals having their own competencies, organizations do have their own competencies, okay? Just like how individuals are trying to be emotionally intelligent, so are organizations. There is a term called intelligent organization, okay? Then you may have heard of learning organization. but then there is also this term known as emotionally intelligent organization. Okay. Now this refers to the aspect of the organization that portrays what it does is what it preaches, or what it lives by is what it shows up. How do we know this? We know it from their presentations, from their behaviors, organizational behaviors, and then we know from their participation in the outside world, other than the organization, trying to socially benefit the world. So big organizations, especially multinational organizations, are, in general terms, to make it clear, very wealthy organizations, very profitable organizations are involved in CSR. So I don't have to say much how profit has something to do with this. Now, what do? They go out and distribute, aid in terms of crises. They go out and, make known or make available scholarships for deserving students. Okay, they fund, in a tremendous manner, in towards innovations. All these new, incubator, sayings for businesses, and something trying to encourage startups are all a part of CSR. Now, the government can also be having a very strong CSR arm, but we're talking about our organizational. So just like how an individual could be emotional intelligence, so an organization could be. And this is reflected from their presentation. And most importantly, you would look at their mission statement, okay? Not the vision, but mission is what implies of their emotional behavior, implies of how responsible they are socially. Okay, if their mission reflects as to what their purpose is for existence, and if it brings about sustainable development as one of their achievements or one of their goals, then you can be assured that the organization is responsible. So we'll take a look at how organizational responsibility is connected with EI. However, if the individuals are emotionally intelligent, so is the organization, because the organization comprises of its human capital, and intellectual skills are seen only in the human capital. Okay, they are inbuilt in a human being as personality traits. So as much as the emotional intelligence is, brought into awareness or brought into their teachings and brought into their practice, the organization becomes emotionally intelligent. An organization is always smart from the type of people it hires, and from the type of people, it promotes, and the type of people that speak for the organization. This is about HR, but this is the connection. All right. Oh, 6. So the benefits of emotional intelligence are, many. We talked about it. Here, relating to the organization, it's decision-making, relationship, and health. Health relates to, the health of the individuals. Now, there are many traits that will help the organization succeed in its goal, and we will be looking at many of these topics. Now, one of the benefits of emotional intelligence is the decision-making, yes, and there are many other. Now, you also have to know that decision-making is also a competency, okay? It's a competency that belongs, or that is a part of the EI cluster of competencies. When you design a competency framework, you have clusters of, competencies. And within clusters lies individual competencies. And within individual competencies lies how you observe their behavior, okay, how it's seen. And that brings about the measurement. So I'm just using decision-making as an example. This is a competency. It's a multi-level competency. So is sensitivity. It's an emotional intelligence-based competency. So is flexibility. And so is adaptability. So is resilience, okay? And so is impact leadership, and so forth. So these are competencies that are related to emotional intelligence. And there are many other competencies, okay, that may not be related to behavioral competency, that may be related to functional competency, that may be related to, social competencies, okay? And then this is how you would differentiate it. So decision making is a competency clustered under emotional intelligence, but this is so you know that decision making helps. If you look at the benefits of EI, it will start all the way from leadership skills to profitability to improve performance, to enhanced relationship among employees and so forth. So this is about how CSR connects with EI. Now we can further look at how EI articulates to your language skills. How you have to come up with your communication skills. I don't know if we talked about this yesterday, but let's go over with it. So emotions will never go away. You have to understand that. What it means is when you have the ability to perceive emotions, you will act on it, or you will act it loud. For example, a child has emotions just like we all. But the difference between the child and an adult is emotions are played out by a child regardless of the situation or the setting. So if he were to shout and ask for something, that's his emotion. If he were to cry for something, that's his emotion. So focusing on these will benefit, and how emotions will have to be managed is what we are understanding here. So a child will play it out, but you cannot. But regardless, you would have to understand them, regulate them, and monitor them in an effective manner. There are cases that we can talk about how individuals in an organization will have to play with their emotions, will have to manage them. And there are some tricks, okay? There are some techniques how you would manage them. So basically you understand them and have it laid out in an effective manner. This is going to help you with your decision making. This is going to help you with your interaction with your colleagues. This is going to help you with your interpersonal relationship, as long as you know how to do it. The other video was from the last week. I think this is a new video.
Well as the individual members that make it run. If each person is well practiced in decision making, good habits are formed. After working on these aspects, the office was better able to deal with internal and external conflicts, leading to a stronger company. Katie knew that the emotional intelligence levels within her office were lacking. She decided to have a meeting to explain the importance of emotional intelligence. She taught that emotional intelligence has an effect on the company as a whole, as well as the individual members that make it run. If each person is well practiced in decision making, good habits are formed. After working on these aspects, the office was better able to deal with internal and external conflicts, leading to a stronger company.
All right, for any organization to rely on improved decision making, they have to come up with technique. One such technique is in the importance of emotional intelligence being, explained to the employees. So most organizations have their employees go through, personality development classes. In fact, for a class like emotional intelligence, very few employees are handpicked to go about attending the EI workshop. In a typical setting, there are about 12 delegates that I have always had, 12, to say max 15, that will attend a one-day workshop, interactive session, dealing with EI, and this will also impact the various departments that they represent. So their job would be to lay out the EI benefits to their team, okay? Because there is such thing as a team IQ that we talk about, okay? We talk about the chemistry, and we talk about a functional team, how you need to have a clear, understanding of, their day-to-day activities. And then, from a strategic standpoint, how you would interact with this in achieving the strategic goal. So this is just an example of, how you would lay out the importance of EI in an organizational setting. Let's start with the other one. We're going to talk about tools to regulate your emotions here. This is nothing but under self-regulation. This is probably a very, very, important aspect of EI. in how you would regulate your emotions, how you would control them, okay? And how different emotions come into the picture, how you would avert, a crisis, okay? Like you are talking to your boss, your coworkers, okay? If everyone says, everything is going good, then, you have to understand that, there is something that you need to know. Now, there is a saying, it's not based from scriptures, but it's a Greek saying that's commonly utilized in this circle. It says, know thyself. You just have to know yourself. So what is the best way of finding out how you are and how you portray your capabilities and how you, uh, are in the eyes of the other person? Okay. So what is the best way to ask how you're doing in business, or how are you as a manager? Okay. And how you're able to, well, before we even get to the EI part, what is the best way to ask to know how you are? The answer is ask other people. This is the best way to know about yourself. We have traditional evaluations, okay, all the way from, personal evaluation to a 360 degrees evaluation. But the best way from our standpoint, from the EI aspect of our learning, is just to ask, okay? And try to ask, in a constructive manner, although they may be given the liberty to criticize you, but you're still supposed to know how well you are, critically, or hypocritically, if you would like to emphasize. So the first question is, you need to ask, how am I? Okay, and this will only tell you, okay, whether you are emotionally intelligent or not, whether what your, weaknesses are or not. Now, when we talk about emotional intelligence, we talk about many personalities that may be, that may be trying to, mishandle, or may trying to make you a captive of emotions. So there are different personalities that we will talk about towards the end. So you have to make sure that you ask the right person. They are all the way from sociopaths, okay, to very empathetic persons, to, they call it energy vampires, okay, aggressive pacifiers, and drama queens. Doesn't relate to a woman. Drama queen could be a man and woman. So these are the characters that you will run into when you are mastering emotional intelligence, that you have to be aware of. How they can belittle you, how they can play with your emotions, and how they will say that if I were you, I would do this. Their common sentence would be, if I would, if I were in your shoes, or if you ask me, So don't get carried away with these emotions. You need to have a fine understanding, and an intellectual, emotional intelligent person would know, how critical his review is. So let's look at how you would, better yourself by asking, okay? Seeing the other side, the best way is to ask other people, take an honest look at yourself and the available tools that you have, okay? I hope this slide is clear. Now, self-awareness and self-management. These are the two topics that we'll talk about in these, okay? Well, self-management is what you are trying to do within you, how you're trying to manage. But this could be a difficulty, this could be a challenge. This management would be very hard to tame if you are not aware of your own self, okay? So in emotional intelligence, we have four self-management, self-awareness, self-motivation, and self-regulation. So we look at a connection between self-management and self-awareness, okay? So self-management is very difficult if you don't have an understanding of your own, or if you don't have a grip on your self-awareness, which means that you have to be aware of how good of a practitioner you are, okay? So people who are not aware of their own self, are not able to manage crisis, are able to get the situation out of control or make it worse, as opposed to people who are aware of their own self, okay? This is so you are not in an oblivion. This is so you're not in denial for your own, and a lot of people are always in denial. They just like to not know the bad things about it. Of course, this was, the way it was in the past, but now it only helps knowing your own selves. Okay. And if you are trying to avoid your dark side or not trying to work on it, for example, anger management, okay, for example, panic attacks, for example, not being able to make a decision when it's a situation, when it's a crisis, then you are most likely to be, to be caught or to be highlighted or to be brought to other people's attention during your, during the techniques that they apply, during the evaluations, during the, progress meetings that you have. So you run into it. There is a lot of psychometric procedures, questions that the research has come up with when it comes to asking. In most organizations, the first step that they ask you to do is fill out a 50 questionnaire, 15, statement questionnaire that you have to start writing yes or no and answering. So this will basically not have them look at it, but it will all be judged by the score that you have, and it's all automatically, automated. And then with the score, they have an idea about how intelligent you are, how socially aware you are, how you are of, your own self. And these questions will be, case scenarios where they would ask you, if you were in a situation like this, what would you do? If you had a boss like this, what would you do? Now it goes on like this. So the connection between self-management and self-awareness is great, and you need to have a fine line or a fine balance between these two, okay? And if you're aware of it, then you are consistent, okay, and accountable. Then you are being consistent and accountable. And a person who doesn't have a good relation between his self-management and self-awareness, may still be consistent, but he wouldn't be able to, he wouldn't be able to manage during crisis. He wouldn't be able to, make things better, or, not having control over things. So they are likely to make matters worse. All right. There are some ways of looking at it, okay? And then the best way is compromise, okay? I'm sure you all understand it. This is known as giving in without giving up, okay? There is a common ground where you will compromise and accept others' ideas, At the same time, you keep your beliefs, and then finding a fine balance, between the two. Now, unless we live in a world which doesn't value diplomacy, compromise can be of, less value. Now, we all live in a, let's say, democratically oriented and, diplomatic world where diplomacy is of value, is treated as a trade. So in this, the compromise would always work, and it will matter more for people who, are of less influence. Well, if you learn to compromise, it's a good skill. If the managers are knowing how to compromise, it's very good. But a person of lower influence, which means that a person at an entry level, at a bottom level, if he learns or if he needs to believe in compromise, then it's of more value to him, because he would be facing, a common ground or adapting to a common ground more often than a person who is in a higher position. All right, let's look at this video.
Henry sat at his desk trying to type up a report. His boss, Todd, interrupted him. Todd told Henry that he was far too slow on his turnaround time. Todd wanted to get angry and say that his boss was being unreasonable, but he knew that this would get him nowhere. He tried to see that his boss must be responding to pressure from the CEO. After taking a deep breath, Henry told his boss that he would continue to work as quickly as he could. Todd thanked him and walked away.
All right. Now, this situation could have been very, blown out of proportion. All right. Do you agree? Because when the boss walks in, it's not a good thing. Now, the boss may be an aggressive person. He may not be a fair guy, but he has a reason to do it. There is something that's pressing him from his above, okay? And there is something that needs to be pressed, from you. So he walks in, okay? And what did Todd do? He just compromised. He just accepted the situation. and he averted a crisis. This is where, you know, self-regulation comes into the play. This is where you would have to think of how you would, you know, bring your emotions, you know, into the play. And this is when you would control your emotions from coming into the play. Even when you have to physically act, you would control yourself. So this is how you would regulate, you know, your emotions. This is how you would look at common ground. And some other techniques could be just to take a pause, just to take a deep breath, okay, just to relax or just to leave the situation. But you are to avoid such, you know, situations which could avoid a crisis. This is a very small video, but it means a lot. And there are many scenarios that are very short cases. You may run into them in real life or in the manual. However, these cases mean a lot, and a lot can be learned from them. And there is the tool that we have along with that.
Henry sat at his desk.
All right, let's look at the self-regulation aspect of PI, and we will look at how we would gain control. Okay, this is commonly known as self-control. So having control or not could be the difference between a successful career or no career. Okay, so you can imagine how controlling these aspects of your life, okay, will make a big difference. Okay, there are very strong statistics that you can look at how the efficiency of a person improves to 100% by gaining control on all these situations. How the management, you know, improves the team performance, you know, by having control over, you know, your emotions or regulating your emotion. So there are different levels, okay. And then the nice quote, as you can see on the top, no one can make you feel inferior, you know, without your consent. So this is also theoretically true. You know, there is no way somebody can rate you lower without having you accept the situation, without having you sign on the form. And then you will have to give your consent to anybody who wishes to downgrade you, who wishes to talk about you. So there are some instances where you will have to confront, ask them as to why they're doing this or why you could be doing. And once again, different personalities that we will run into. Some coping techniques, okay? Take a deep breath, step away from the issue, use positive thinking. We talked about this, how you would be able to, you know, bring in positive thinking, how you would be able to think of something else, how your brain reacts to positive thinking, and how you can think of the reason why the boss walked into Todd's office to talk about it, okay? So you have to access the situation from a little, you know, deeper way, a little stepping outside, you know, the scope, and then stepping outside the environment. So there are different ways you can add to positive thinking. We talked about it in our earlier modules, how positive thinking will bring about, you know, positive pressure. So these are the techniques as to how, coping techniques, how we can come up and control our emotions. Whenever there is a crisis to be avoided, chances are your emotions would need to be in control, as opposed to, you know, letting the emotions play out and taking a physical step. Additional relaxation techniques, you know, are prescribed by therapists and, you know, on your own, you know, physical. We talked about how visualization has a relationship with emotionalization. This was earlier what we talked about. So visualization is very important. You can have a visual board, or you can have it written down on a piece of paper on your journal. And whenever there is a problem, remember, it's better to draw a picture of it. Or if nothing else, you know, is going to help, draw a picture and see if it would help you with that. Okay, summarizing it, you'd have to relax, take control, and not allow negativity. We talked about how there is negative pressure and how there is positive pressure. Sometimes the negative pressure, is due to the environment that you have to look at. We're all living in an area, in a time when we have a lot of negative pressures, coming around us, and that's impacting your day-to-day life. So same way, you would not be allowing a negativity to take control, and you would relax, take a break, go out, do nothing. And there are many other relaxation techniques prescribed by the physicians, by the specialist hospitals. There are a lot of clinics, hospitals that specialize in, the relaxation techniques. This will help you how to reduce your heart rate, how to lower your blood pressure, how to improve, your, health, how to improve your levels, everything related to your physiological levels that come into, play medically, using medications and trying to avoid them. Relaxation techniques, how would you improve the concentration? Basically, anything that works for you is okay. The breathing techniques, relaxation techniques is what you would focus on a regular basis. Stress is what will take over if you don't do it.
Tom was very upset at his coworker Jim for taking full credit during a staff meeting for an idea they had come up with together. Instead of immediately blowing up and getting angry with the coworker, Tom decided to manage his stress. He took a few deep breaths and tried to think about the company instead of himself. After gaining control of his emotions, he told his coworker how he felt about the situation. Jim apologized, and the two coworkers were able to continue working together in peace.
All right, this was also a very interesting video. You saw how he could have acted physically, but he did not, okay? And everything is back to normal now. He averted a crisis by regulating his emotions, controlling his emotions. This is where you need to, have self-control. These are the times where you need to understand your emotions, okay? And then you would have to lay it out. And then you would have to see how, you would have to also learn from it as to how you have averted a crisis. That was about self-regulation.
Tom
All right, business practices. So here we'll take a look at what an employee is comprised of, okay? How his emotions and ability to manage them, level of emotional intelligence, communication skills are all a part of whether or not the business is successful. Now, this relates to scenarios, situations, how you would bring about, the needed regulatory emotions. Here, let's say, for example, you are facing a deadline. The boss is facing the deadline. So he is to make sure that, the deadline is taken seriously. And if he thinks that the deadline is being missed or it's very close, then he has to fight for it. He has to bring about every possible avenue to bring to the attention of people what the ramifications would be of missing the deadline. He has to fight till the last minute, just like how a physician will fight when it comes to, when it comes to saving a life. So, and how to manage them in workplace is very important. You would have to go about, okay, and use your emotions as to explaining what or how the situation is. Now, what could you do to keep the situation, tense, or to keep to calm the situation? One way of looking at it is you would yell out at everyone. There are times where people yell out, especially in some different organizations where, the business is related very strongly to the numbers. Sales organization, it's common practice for the managers to yell at their employees, okay, to explain it to them, and that this still happens. That's one way of technique that they think that works, because they may not be able to soothe or calm the situation. So in the same manner, Here, when you have a deadline to be met, you would call out a meeting as opposed to yelling. You would call out a meeting, lay emphasis, talk about the deadline, the ramifications of missing the deadline, and how things would be, in control if everyone does his job. So these are the simple, ways of doing it. And this will also be a time to get a feedback from the employees as to how they reach this point, how the deadline is so close, or how we could actually miss the deadline. So these would also be a time to learn through the process of losing, control by getting a feedback from each employer and talking to them. So this is how you would manage them in the workplace in different scenarios, You would listen, stay in control, positive outcome. You would talk about anything that's, possible in meeting the obligations. Role of emotional intelligence at work: empathy, self-awareness; intuition, self-regulation; politics, motivation. Now, if you look at the left, we're talking about EI, but it says social personal, which means that these are social competencies, relating to mind, as opposed to cognitive. In the beginning, we talked about the fine line between mind and heart, This is how, the emotions come into the picture. There is a fine line between what your mind seeks and what your heart wants. So same way, some roles of emotional intelligence, is a part of social persona. People who have these social competencies are very empathetic, are intuitive, and are politics in the sense understanding to the mechanics of an organization. So empathy is under self-awareness, intuition is under self-regulation, and politics, or the mechanics, is under self-motivation. Now, I took empathy as an example earlier as to how you could try to understand how empathetic a person is. Do you know it by just talking to the person? You would only know it when this is a situation, when a situation arises. And we're in need of a lot of these very highly sensitive people who are empathetic to their coworkers, to their employers, and to the world at large, and to the planet Earth, you can say. They are the people who always answer back. And you can never expect anything bad from these empathetic people, who are highly empathetic, be it at the workplace or other. Whenever you see some derogatory comments on the social media, for example, the online troll agencies or online trolls in a forum, rest is assured that when they are talking about something wrong, they are not being the type of people that you would be willing to work with. They are not empathetic. They wouldn't do anything frightening or anything heartbreaking. In fact, they have to control their emotions in such a way that they are not empathetic to everyone else, because you cannot. So this is where they would have to control their emotions by not being empathetic to everyone else, by not offering a solution to everyone else, but keeping things, to a select few. So these are, the social areas, that you have to understand and how they play at work. It's always good to have an empathetic person. Intuitions comes from a specific part of the brain, your feelings, your gut feelings, your hunches is what they call. This is how, you would classify it as a social, competency. And this comes under self-regulation. And then the last one, we talked about how you will self-motivate yourself. There are different ways of looking into it. And this is mostly pertaining to your social area, relating to the mechanics of an organization. Mechanics in the sense how work gets done, how work gets moved. And there is a term called flow, flow is sort of a common usage slang, but no, it relates to your mind. It relates to your brain. So when they say you have to have the flow, this is more, Hollywood dish. However, it actually relates to how your mind should be always engaged. Okay, you get to the flow after you initiate the stuff. Okay, this is relating to your self motivation. So you get to your highest efficiency after a while because your skills are engaged. Your skills and attributes are continuing to engage. Your mind is engaged, and this is how the flow comes into the picture. So a little bit about the social role, that EI plays, at work. All right. We all agree to disagree. You may have heard of this phrase, agreeing to disagree. So basically, this is nothing but everyone is consensus. Everyone likes the fact what everyone disagrees to each other. Okay. This is to say that we should appreciate our differences. If we can live in a room and agree to disagree, then you're basically appreciating your disagreements. This is what constructive, disagreeing is. Okay. You are okay to be constructive, criticizing, your own self or your colleagues. There was a time when you would see in a meeting room, but people will start fighting, hit each other, whatever they can. Okay. That's because they couldn't agree to disagree. And this happens. You've seen it on the TV, and other places. So this is a great, act of EI, not being able to regulate the individual self and going out of control. So how would you manage disagreeing constructively? By being positive, okay, by being productive, confirming everyone's ideas, okay, and present your own. So when the question of disagreeing comes, you have to know that it's about not able to accept somebody else's ideas. So this has a lot to do with accepting somebody else's idea. So there are many cases in the book where, it's a common occurrence. You will run into cases. And then we'll look at organizations, look at most effective ways, how can they improve strategies, okay, disagree in the past, how disagreement was taken in the past, how things will go about, in the future. So once again, these are regulations, okay, that you need to bring about by, having, stay put, being positive, being productive, and confirming their ideas. Okay, you have to agree to their idea, for which you have to be a good listener and present your own.
Carrie called a meeting to discuss the details of an upcoming project with her team. She wanted to promote emotional intelligence, so she tried to stay level-headed and calm. She needed everyone to work later than usual for the assignment to stay on track. One of the employees disagreed. They showed wonderful constructive disagreement skills when they made sure to mention that although Carrie had made a valid point, showing up earlier would work just as well as working late and would fit better with some of the team members' personal schedules. Carrie listened to what was said, and after emphasizing the importance of meeting the deadline, she told the team members that she didn't mind what extra hours were worked as long as the deadline was met.
All right. So there was a meeting called, and there was one person, who did not agree. Okay, but however, it was accepted because he agreed constructively, and he came up with an option of, instead of staying late, we would come a 15-minute or a 20-minute early, take an early window and then get going. And this was all agreed. Okay. So this is how you would agree constructively. The boss agreed to her idea, but she has an excellent idea, and then she presented it very well. All right. Module 9 talks about optimism and pessimism. We know these are the two big traits in an organization where it's divided among where it's divided among an optimistic person and a pessimistic person. And optimism gives hope. Sometimes it gives too much hope, okay? And pessimism only talks about the dark side. It's just like how a glass is half empty as opposed to half full. So these are the two school of thoughts, in every organization. Neither extreme is considered better than the other, okay? The proper balance is required. So these are two ends of a spectrum: optimism on the left-hand side and pessimism on the right-hand side. And this is how you would look at how, the balance is done. Now, I'm sure most of you will err to the side of caution. It's better to be optimistic as opposed to, not being pessimistic, okay? So what are the good things about optimism? Okay, they always bring about the positive side, okay? But sometimes too much optimism will take you away from too much reality. Okay, so this is how they look at it. Sometimes it gives false hopes, disappointments, and then sometimes it it could even make you look greedy. Okay, but optimism is never to be taken in a negative manner. Optimism is never to be taken as a derogatory practice. And then an optimist is a person who needs to be regarded, okay, who needs to be, paid attention and brought into practice his skills. And this is what we look at, except for the fact that, there has to be a fine balance between his level of optimism and, the realistic possibilities. So we'll look at individually what optimism is about. This is a positive spin, more productive, good for your health, okay, and you come up with a resolution. So this is basically to find the positive side, and then to to know that there is a positive side that exists, and to look past your current problems, and come up with a solution. These qualities actually turn out to be for the well-being of the organization and for the good health of the individual. I'm sure you ran into many optimist persons, who gave you, a good understanding of what the world is. However, you thought that, this is not realistic. This may not be possible. Okay, so this is your understanding of what optimism is based on your knowledge or your knowledge of understanding. And then basically that is their optimism. And then this is related to how the brain works. Okay, you have to understand everything. Towards the end, we'll talk about how the brain works. There are areas of your brain that records events. Okay, and if there is something that's recorded, it's very easy for the brain to, retrieve it, okay, and work on it. So same way the optimism comes from the events that an optimistic person has been through in his life. He may have visited many places. He may have seen how organizations work, how things are possible. So this is from his, epistemological position. This is from his mental understanding of how things work that he's laying out, the optimism. So you may not apply it to you based on your epistemological understanding, which means that based on your knowledge, it may not seem right, or it may not seem possible. It may not seem realistic. But that's how optimism works. Okay. In a realistic sense, in an organizational settings, if it seems not possible, it never happened in the history of the organization or the patch achievements or the productivity, then you are to know that this will only bring a false hope. Okay. This will only bring about disappointment. So this is the other side of, being optimistic. Okay. There's no doubt optimistic employees tend to be more productive, okay? And then they are usually honest, they look at trends, they look at for a bigger picture, okay? They're also likely to have long-lasting, processes laid out, working on problems, with a solution, that will last long, and basically have a good interpersonal relationship. C, a resolution means they come up with problem-solving solutions that are sustainable, okay, that are realistic. They keep trying, and then this is how it works out. And if you look at the other side, of optimism, or the other side of side of the spectrum, then it's pessimism, which remains always detrimental to the organizational practices, to the organizational well-being, and detrimental to the culture, okay, because it brings about a lower morale, and the employee morale is down, which is the main objective of the HR, to keep up with the employee morale. And then it goes on giving you high stress, okay, relating to medical conditions and whatnot. The balance between optimism and pessimism, is very required, because extremism is not encouraged. Extremism is not, a trait. So in any event, extremism needs to be, eradicated, okay, because it only gives you false hope and will keep you away from the reality.
Dave was a strong believer in optimism. He completed every task with a hopeful outlook. One day, he was asked to increase the production output of his team by 30% within 1 month. Although he had concerns, he remained optimistic the whole way through. He told his team that the best effort possible is all he could ask of them, and that is exactly what they gave him. At the end of the month, the production goal had not been fully met, but the team was proud of themselves and Dave for all the hard work that they were able to produce in such a short amount of time.
All right, so optimism is another source to sustain competitive advantage. An organization seeks to have a competitive advantage, and then, the human capital, is the best source. And within the human capital, you need to have all these competencies. And the most important that we're talking about now is optimism. Okay, you've seen this case, how it was able to come up with meeting with the objectives and improving the performance by simply being, an optimistic person. Differences between optimism and pessimism, a pessimist person is never a good leader. Not necessarily that he would be a leader, but he may not be a good leader. Okay, because he's constantly going through stress, bodily pain. Okay, so just like how empathy is a desirable trait, pessimistic people, or pessimism is a totally undesirable feature. Okay, so the model is to have an environment which says be happy, and not to worry.
Dave was a strong believer in optimism. He completed every task with a hopeful outlook. One day, he was asked to increase the production output of his team by 30% within 1 month. Although he had concerns, he remained optimistic the whole way through. He told his team that the best effort possible is all he could ask of them, and that is exactly what they gave him. At the end of the month, the production goal had not been fully met, but the team was proud of themselves and Dave for all the hard work that they were able to produce in such a short amount of time.
I'm sorry, the videos are repeating. All right, let's look at how we can make an impact. Okay, to be aware is to be socially present. Okay, and these are some of the tactics it will make us to have an impact on the life of others. How do we impact others? These are physical conditions. Now, there is a competency known as impact leadership. Okay, it falls under this. Okay, so there are some good and bad, pros and cons of how impact leadership matters. Okay, and how emotionally intelligent you could be. So how would you create an impact? This is through your first impression, be it at workplace, be it your first day at job, or be it your job interview. So you are to be, giving a first good impression. Now, unfortunately, your first impression, they call it the first is the best impression. But the first impression is usually a physical impression. It has nothing to do with your cognitive skills. Okay, but it's still a requirement. So you cannot be cognitively, smart, but not physically, or physically dim. So you need to have a mix of physical and cognitive. So physical is easy. You would come up with the right physical, appearance, attraction. That's very easy. You have to dress it well. Well, well dressed doesn't mean you have to overdress. Okay. So to err on the caution side, you have to make sure that you are lightly conservative, is what they call. Okay. It's better to be lightly conservative because it depends on who the person is and his perception. If his perception is of the old school, then he is likely to be okay with your light conservative as opposed to being totally conservative. But definitely not when you are having a flamboyant, appearance, too much colorful, flashy, or, whatever you can think of. So it requires a conscious effort to, present yourself physically. And then comes the body language, how well-mannered you are, okay, your handshake, and then it goes on, okay, your behavior. If you were offered something, how you would, asking for, if they would ask you for water and how you would say, no, thank you, or coffee. So body language speaks louder than words, actions are louder than a word. It starts out with, your behavior, your posture, your habits, and your, tax, which means that you're comfortable, your body is not shaking. All these little things add up to the body language, and how well you position yourself, your smiles, your spoken, your words, and then your facial expressions. Okay. So this is the first impression, but unfortunately that is also, an impression, that is based on your physical appearance. Okay. Now you would have to access a situation once you are into managing a business and you have taken care of the appearance, the first impression, then you would be able to use your emotions. Once you get in, you will be able to assess the situation, take a step back, be aware of the emotion, know what you're getting into. These are based on your research. These are based on your understanding. Okay. Back then when you went for an interview, you always wanted to review the company background, look at their annual reports. Okay. And then so forth. The next condition is being zealous without being offensive. Being zealous is a good person. Being zealous is a good habit, but being overzealous is not. Okay, which means that trying to be inquisitive, trying to find out what is going on, but trying to find out more about your employee, more about your co-workers. Okay, it could be offensive. So once again, you have to strike a balance between being zealous and overzealous, and go from there.
Theo had a job interview. When he showed up, he was dressed in a fine suit and was properly groomed. He carried himself with confidence and showed the interviewer his appreciation for the chance to become a part of the company. When he demonstrated that he was very excited to start work, he also made it clear that his number one priority would be to help the people he worked with succeed. The interviewer was genuinely impressed, and Theo was immediately hired.
That was a good example of how physical appearance matters. We're pretty much done with our topic. We'll just take a look at how business cases are handled. There is one slide here. It talks about 5 ways to measure the EI of your boss. I talked about this. This is a special topic that asks you if your boss is EI. Why would you need to know if your boss is EI? Okay. First of all, bosses are most probably having a higher level of EI, but it helps to watch and to bring up your positive thinking by learning from him. I told you guys yesterday that whatever you can copy, you would, whether it's in writing, in language, speaking, or the attributes. What you are to copy is the behavior implication. How a person behaves is to be recorded and to be learned from. This is not just for your own self, not in your mind, but in, it could be a practice that everyone follow. So that's one topic. And the second one is 5 ways to spot an emotional intelligent boss. This is a continuation. If you can find these 5, traits in him, then you have the answer. Take a look at it. All right, ego is one thing we didn't talk about, but that's, easy to be recognized. So this is a little bit of good about EQ. Read it. All right, in soft skills, we started with EQ, emotional, quotient. And I said not to be confused with intelligent quotient. The good thing about EQ is it is, it can be improved as opposed to IQ. So under EQ, we have 2 areas, okay, social and emotional, or social and personal. And this is what we built on all throughout. Empathy is under EQ, which is a social competency, okay? And then leadership skills is under personal competencies or emotional competencies. EQ stands out before EI. Read this slide. This is about, agreeing to disagree. Emotions and brain, do you think that's related? All right, if we have some time, let's talk about it. Emotions, are a part of the brain, a specific area of the brain. It's called amygdala. Okay, this is where all the emotions are placed. So if you were to have that part of the brain cut out, which the neurosurgeons do it, then you don't have any emotions left. Okay, but it is for our understanding, it is helpful to know how these emotions pop up from which part of the brain. Okay, so this is how you would understand. So anytime in the past when people were believing in, intuition or the gut feelings that they call it, not a thoroughly based research work, but, their hunches, then this is coming from, a deeper aspect of the brain, or, something more ancient, okay, something more, on the sidelines as opposed to the top of the brain, as they call it in business, okay, the cortex, the top part. So there are repositories of, events in your brain, depending on the area, the location. We are not to be concerned about how the brain works. Of course, that's beyond our knowledge. We're not to be concerned about how these emotions come. But all you have to understand is if you take notice of these eventful occurrings that pop up in your brain and relate to you, then you are likely in a position to avoid the peril, okay, and move on further, because this is all relating to your brain. And you be sure to take care of your brain by eating the stuff that's healthy to your brain, as opposed to eating, what's, unhealthy to your entire body. And then also, make sure that the best remedy for the brain to be working efficiently is to have it reprocessed, or have it processed, or have it, shut down for some time. It's not going to shut down, but it's possible. So you need to have, once again, a good night's sleep, okay? And some people are used to taking a naps, in between, whatever works for you, okay? So once again, we're down to health, our physical practices, our how we would, take care of ourselves, how we would keep the stress levels down, and so forth. So this is a wider topic. Some recommended readings that I have given would help. But the most important book that you would like to read, or at least look at the summary, is Daniel Goleman's Emotional Intelligence, that talks about everything that we have dealt with here. Maybe not, but more from a business perspective. And then same thing that we did, same way we did in earlier schedules, is to avoid everything that needs to be avoided. In EI, we've learned about how we manage our emotions and how we can basically, avoid conflicts, how we can, not ignore other person's viewpoint, how we can be empathetic. Basically, major part of EI is how to play around with your emotions and how to understand other people's emotions. Okay, that is why we have a big, regard for highly empathetic persons. And then there are practices how to get rid of your negative pressures. Some of you had a question about positive. We covered a lot. Okay, and lastly, I would say continue with your journal writing, whatever comes to your mind relating to your emotions, relating to your stress, and relating to your, situations, write it down, and this will actually help you. So I think I'm gonna conclude now our topic EI, although, this was, considered a reasonably well, duration wise, well prolonged, but this is the beginning of your journey into the world of EI, if you were to build on it, if you were to understand it. So this module is going to come to an end, but your journey into EI will continue. So with that, I'm going to conclude our section on EI. Hopefully, we conveyed everything possible that we could look at. And then I will be open for questions now. But before I do that, I would like to thank you all for attending, and also to let you know that we're going to be having a session on job skills and resume writing area tomorrow by Mr. Saeed. So I will be off tomorrow, but I will see you guys the day after tomorrow with more topics on HRM and competency-based management and so forth. So I guess that's about it. Panelists, you can take over. I'm available for questions.
Okay, thank you so much, Shah sir. It was really a great lecture and a lot of learning from it. We have a couple of questions which are already been raised by the attendees. So I'll start with the first question. How to increase skill in emotional intelligence?
How to
increase skills in emotional intelligence?
Well, if you have EI, that's where your skills come into the picture. Okay. So for example, one EI skill would be sensitivity. Okay. The other would be flexibility. The third would be adaptability. The fourth would be resilience. So if you can bring about sensitivity in you, then you are working on it. And then if you would like to be adaptable to the change, then that's what you are. And then there are levels under each. So if I look at flexibility, there would be like at least 4 items under which you would have to do. So if you want to bring about a competency that will bring in more decision-making skills, you would look at that competency and you would look at the 4 items in there that what you need to do. I will try to show a competency the next time when we meet, and then you'll have a better idea. But it's all available, and you have to build on these skills. Read and then see what's there, and then that's what you would have to build on.
Okay, thank you. How can we use emotional intelligence in a regular life?
Well, we are using emotional intelligence in our day-to-day life by being, self, assertive, by being positive, by being everything that we are doing. But most importantly, what you have to do is learn how to manage emotions. If you're losing temper, then you're not being emotionally intelligent. If you are able to act physically, then you are not. Okay. And if you are able to understand other people's emotions, okay, then you are being. And then if you can be empathetic to a person when it comes to a sad situation in his life or a celebration, and you take part in a sad and happy event, then you are being emotionally intelligent. So this is what you have to bring about and practice. It's all about managing your emotions.
All right. Thank you so much. I've got a question raised by Mr. Vijay.
Yeah.
Please explain the giving in and giving up ideas. Don't they affect our self-image as submissive always?
Giving in without giving out.
Please explain the giving in and giving up ideas.
Well, was this a topic in here? Well, giving in without giving up is compromise. And what you're saying is giving in. I didn't get the question again. Are you talking about compromising the situation?
Yeah, I think so. He's talking about the same. He says that doesn't it affect our self-image as submissive?
No, no, no. It's not an act of, okay, well, that's a good question. See, throughout this EI journey, you have to know that, if you are trying to hide a dark side of you, then chances are you will be able to, not be aware that people are already aware of your dark side. Okay. So an act of powerlessness is a very weak trait. So you have to get that out of your mind. There is no such thing as being powerless or weak in business. Okay. It's what you are and what you do. And you just go on improving your image physically or mentally. So we talked about the power of having, a decision to make. So for example, when there is an announcement who wants to do a presentation, then you have to be in a powerful situation to accept it or not accept it. But you are not to avoid it and be in a situation that you are powerless, okay? Because if you do the presentation, it helps you with your confidence, your respect among your peers, and then it goes forward as to your personal development. So it's not a submissive thing, to compromise, because we live in a world of diplomacy, and it is, more of a practice when you are less of an influence, which means that if you're not in a leadership position, then you are to compromise more than when you are in a leadership position. But if you look at the traits of these successful CEOs, like for example, Jack Welch, who was the CEO of GE, then you will run into situations how he was being so submissive, how he was being so down to earth, and how he was so negotiating. All right, next question.
I've got a question from Shireen Patan. What are the steps to understand who I am in self-management and self-awareness?
Okay, a self-management and self-awareness have a unique relationship. I talked about it. It's in your manual. So if you can manage yourself, okay, by being aware of your own self, by being positive or negative, then you are being accountable and consistent. These are the two words that are used. So you are being accountable and consistent if you are able to be aware and manage. If you are not being aware and you are trying to manage yourself, then you may still be consistent, but you are at peril of losing things out of control. So this is the relationship between self-management and self-awareness. Remember, self-management is very hard to tame, to manage, if you're not aware of yourself. So you have to be an aware practitioner, which means that you have to know what your good and bad things are. And I said the best thing to know how you are is to ask people, okay? And stay away from those 4 personalities that I talked about: energy vampires, okay? Drama queens or kings, and aggressive pacifiers, and a lot of other aggressive personalities that you will run into. You stay away from them and try to get an idea what you are. And then you move on to understanding your own self, and that's when you can self-manage. Next.
Why is our mind always attracted to negative things quickly?
Okay. Well, it has a lot to do with the secretions in your brain, okay? But you're not to worry much about it. You know, once you're used to liking something and then you go for it and then you like it until you get fed up or until you are, you know, um, until you got bored, okay? So your mind will try to opt for something else because unless you find something new, you know, those secretions are not released, which is an addiction to you. So this is how, you know, the mind perceives happiness, you know, good events in your life. So negativity is a thought, okay? It's a part of your self-control, okay? This is mentioned under, you know, towards the end of the module, like module 8 or 9, how you would regulate your mind and self-control. This has nothing to do with your own nafs. This has nothing to do, you know, with your, you know, with, I don't know how to say, but this is to keep your mind engaged with skills. Okay, this is how you would keep yourself busy, and this is how negativity will come into the picture. So you have to act out, you know, positive by learning those exercises. Okay, and this has something to do with physiological stuff in your brain, where you would always like to go for negative things because with the negative you have a liking, and because of that newer aspect of liking, there is a secretion in your brain that you enjoy. So this is, you know, psychological, physiological, and physical. But in the real world, you are in, try to practice, you know, all the habits to maintain a positive thinking and keep your brain busy, you know, with skills and keep yourself engaged. This is how you would, and, you know, reciting, chanting, whatever you can to keep yourself positive. Next
Thank you so
question.
much. Uh, are there any specific tools using which I can learn EI, practice the techniques, and master them?
Uh, Tools to learn and practice.
EI,
Oh,
emotional
yeah. Well,
intelligence.
you have a toolbox. That's what we talked about it. Okay, you have a toolbox. If anger is your problem, then you have to learn how to manage anger. Okay, if going physical is your problem, you have to understand how to, you know, be less physical. You know, the little videos that we saw, how the boss walked into and talking about a deadline or talking about his slow work, how would you manage it? You would try to forget it, stay away, take a deep breath, walk away, you know, think of something positive. Okay, so these are the traits that you have to list it down, okay, and then see how you would have control over them. And this is very important for you all to do it, especially, you know, be on a journey on gaining competencies, okay, and being emotionally involved by regulating those emotions as a part of your ongoing, you know, learning journey. Next.
Thank you. How can we prolong self-control and self-motivated?
How can we prolong self-control and self-motivated? Okay. You know, unlike self-management, self-control is very easy. You know, you look under the module under self-control and self-motivation, and you will see self-control has a lot to do with, you know, these positive techniques, learning from emotional intelligent people, and bringing about empathy. We talked about how a crisis anywhere in the world would have to be, you know, referred to in your writings, in your emails, in your conversation, and try to look at empathetical people who are blessed with this empathetic skill, who are uh, uh, empathiast, as they call it. So we would have to look around and build on these habits, and it's all through learning. There are many, many ways to be having control over your emotions and being motivated. Okay, and then the best part about this aspect of, you know, gaining this intelligence skill is it's learnable. It's something that you can improve. Okay, this is what we're learning in EI. That's what makes EI a very hot topic, because IQ cannot be improved, but EQ can be. And this is by practice. If you were to start working on these competencies now, in 6 months you will have a grip on a few good competencies, and this is only learned. This is a learned process until it becomes, you know, a part of your subconscious mind. It becomes a physical and mental task that you get used to it. So it's all about learning them. Next.
Thank you. How to be optimistic when I am in adverse situation?
Well, you just have to look at the brighter side. Okay. You have to think of, you know, think in the ways how an optimist person will look at. Okay. And not try to look at negative things. Okay. Because you have to think that if you're looking at pessimistic behavior, then you have to know that a pessimism involves stress. Okay. Dysfunctional thought, and then fatigue. They're always in pain. Okay, they end up in pain, and they can never be good leaders. So if you are thinking of negative aspect in an adverse situation, then you have to think that this will only give me, this will only make me sick, and try to look at only at the positive things. Okay, that's what the module talks about it. So by being positive, you are applying all the traits of an optimistic person, though they might be over, but you just go on saying that hope is a good thing. Okay, there's a saying, hope is a good thing, maybe the best of all things, and it never dies. All right, next question.
Thank you. Next question is from Ankit. How to understand others' emotion and his mindset towards you?
Well, you have to give importance to their viewpoint. This was one of the topics that we referred to. So you have to give importance to your viewpoint. You have to think that they exist the way they exist, okay? And you cannot have control over competencies. You cannot have leadership abilities unless you give space to the other person, what he's saying. So being a good listener, okay? And then you can definitely bring about, optimism in the conversation. And just like how you would want your feelings to be protected, the same way you will protect his feelings. For example, a person who is fired, is being conveyed this message by a boss. Okay. Now, how he will convey it verbally with his body language is important. And this is only possible when he was in the shoes of others. So if he was fired, at any point in time in his life, then that's when he will recall and say to him. So you put yourself in the other person's shoes, look at his situation. If a person is very difficult, if he walks into the room in a different way, he dresses differently, put yourself into his position and try to understand him. And that's when you will be able to understand his emotions. And that's what, empathy is. Right, next.
We'll take another 2 more questions and we'll wrap up for the day as it's already 6 p.m. So I have a question from Samreen Tanazum. Can an optimistic person become an pessimistic depending on situation they are put into?
Optimism and pessimism depend on emotional balance of the brain. Well, if a person is continuously pessimistic, then this could be a medical condition, but it doesn't relate to the brain. There's nothing, wrong with the brain, okay, or nothing you can do with the brain when it comes to optimism and pessimism. But it's basically the practices, okay, and your thought process. How you bring it up. So optimism can be improved, okay, and so does pessimism that can be brought down. And this is through the physical practices that we talked about, okay, the physical practices and the techniques that we talked about. But this is not a disease in the brain, is what I can tell you. Okay, next.
So why nonverbal communication matters when it comes to EI?
Well, EI is all about verbal and nonverbal, half and half. Okay, so if you are conveying a message of happiness with a frown on your face, okay, that's your expression, facial, your body language, then the person will be confused where you have a frown on your face, you look sad or funny, and you're saying him congratulations on the birth of your baby. Okay, at the same time, when you are smiling, laughing, and telling the person that you are fired, then this would be a misfit. It would be confusing for a person to understand, and the message will not be, conveyed. So your question was nonverbal. matters halfway as much as verbal matters in getting the message across, and that's due to your emotional intelligence. Next.
Okay, thank you. I'll take one last question because this question I saw coming in our Q&A for a couple of days and it has not yet been addressed. So I'll club two questions together. Why is emotional intelligence so important in life, and how can we practice emotional intelligence at workplace as boss to its subordinates and vice versa?
Well, EI is very important in life, and in business, in personal life and in business, because it all gives you good things. Okay. A person may lack a good degree from college, okay, or a good background, in schooling or college, but he can still be very successful and go up to the mark of a CEO or the commander, and whatever, due to his competencies relating to EI. And it's very important because this is the only thing that can be learned, okay, and can be improved. Okay, so these can be adopted by learning and it becomes a part of your natural self. So it's very important because this is the area that you can build on, unlike IQ that cannot improve, with practice. And I forgot the other part of the question. This is important.
The other part of the question was how we can practice emotional intelligence at workplace as boss to its subordinates and vice versa.
Well, this is exactly what I want you all to do. You have to, radiate, intelligence emotionally at the workplace as your boss by being nice to the employees, by appreciating their work, by patting their back, by going about asking them how their family is, okay, and congratulating them whenever they have a good situation, and being very, very sensitive to their inner feelings. So these are the regular day-to-day things that we do and that we need to do. And in the past, it was only quantitative skills and only was work production number. But now this is the human element that we're looking at. And this is how they are measuring you with qualitative means, okay, by your behavior, by your appearance, by your handshake, by the way you walk in, by the way you look, and by the way you smile, and by the way you, manage your emotions, by the way you control your anger. So this has nothing to do with your technical skills, okay? So for now, I don't care what your technical skills are, or put your technical skill aside and just work on this. And this is what matters when you are a boss, okay? So this is to have a brainwash as to what your technical skills are of no value. Forget your degrees, forget your technical skills of no value. If you want to be successful in life, apt to these soft skills and be an emotional intelligence, especially when you are a boss.
All right.
All right.
Thank you so much, Shah Saab. And I would request now Saeed Bhai to please come and talk for a couple of minutes before we end the session. And if you have anything to share with the participants as well.
Well, thank you so much, Shah Saab, and also to Shahzad Bhai. Yeah, I think we are good. And since we started, okay, in the start of the webinar, I mentioned about the time and the stress management, and also the day-wise recordings available on LMS. And tomorrow, okay, we are going to upload, or probably tonight, we are going to upload the emotional intelligence material as well. Shah Saab has already provided us with that material. So you should be able to, access that material, once we upload it. Yeah, and then I answered a lot of pretty much queries, that came up in the chat box today and in the Q&A section also on the LMS side of it. Okay, and if still people have any queries in logging in, okay, you can, please feel free to ask, and then we'll be able to, take it up, inshallah.
Saeed, about tomorrow's.
Yeah, and also, tomorrow I'll be taking, the session for tomorrow, and the topic is going to be resume writing, effective resume writing, and essentials of interview. So there will be 2 modules that will be covered, and basically I'll be talking about, how do you write an effective resume, and what are the do's and don'ts that needs to be there in the resume, and also about the essentials of interview. Again, how do you prepare for the interview. So there are 2 e-learning courses on that. So I'll be guiding you throughout the session from 4:30 until 6 o'clock on these two sessions tomorrow. So if you feel that this session would be important to you, please attend. And also if you feel that if your friends and family can join, please share them with them as well, because this is really important that people understand the importance of a resume, and also why is an interview important for them. So I look forward to meet you tomorrow, inshallah.
Thank you so much, Saeed Bhai. To all the participants, it would be very important to know that because of this lockdown situation, many people around us, you must have noticed that they have lost their jobs. So this session which we are conducting tomorrow, inshallah, it will be very beneficial for yourself and for them as well. So we encourage you to encourage them, ask them to join tomorrow's session at least, to know how we can help them to improve their resume, how they can upskill their skills in terms of presentation for interviews. So we request you all to speak with them and ask them to come on board and attend tomorrow's lectures as well. So thank you, Mr. Shah, for your wonderful session, and Saeed Bhai for your support and valuable time today. We will see you again tomorrow, inshallah, and all the participants. It was an honor and respect to have you all on board. It was fantastic to see you all. Keep coming for these live sessions, and I'm sure that every day we are taking some good learnings from these sessions. Thank you for being part of AMP Employability and Soft Skill program. We will inshallah see you all tomorrow. Also ask your friends and family members to join these sessions and benefit by improving their skills to face the corporate. Thank you so much. This is Shehzad signing off from here. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.